Thank you for joining to the session. Driving cost efficiency and elevate Azure ROI. So really excited for all of you to be here. My name is Mrunal Patwa. I am from worldwide strategy team in Microsoft. We're going to talk about cost efficiency and Azure ROI today. Top of mind for a lot of you folks. And a lot of times we think about only cost and only savings when we think about ROI. But really, what it really boils down to is the best practices, thinking about your business priorities, and aligning to the strategic values that your organization is looking for. And really, when we go a little bit deeper into this, it starts with asking the right questions. So let's start with cost efficiency, which is such a critical focus for the organizations today. 77% of the CEOs are actively pursuing cost efficiency measures to safeguard the organizational performance. It's a number one thing in terms of the top 5 strategic priorities for CFOs today. And if you're a CIO, focusing on the cost and ROI, more than 65% of the CIOs meet the success in terms of their strategic organizational goals. So for today's session, here's how we're going to break down the agenda. We'll start with building the foundation for long-term business value. I'll take you through all the questions that I talked about that aligns with the business priority. And we'll take you through the building the long-term business value. Then we'll go into designing scalable and efficient architecture and unlocking savings for optimizing cost with Azure pricing offers. And my colleague Rob will take you through some awesome and cool demos in terms of that. So to create a lasting business value, it's really essential to start a strong foundation. These means aligning your investments with strategic priorities, strategic goals, and ensuring every initiative drives measurable impact. So it starts with identifying and prioritizing high-impact use cases. Think about use cases that drive revenue growth, enhance customer experience, accelerate innovation, unlock data-driven decisions, improve operational efficiency. The best use case is the one that aligns with your business priorities. And when you will evaluate these high-impact use cases, you'll come across some competing priorities. Every business has multiple goals. Is it going to be about revenue growth? Is it going to be about customer experience? Is it going to be about data-driven decision, efficiency? We have to balance it out. Then there's alignment challenge. Does it fit your strategic priorities and drive measurable results? Many ideas sound good, but in reality, they fail to align with core objectives. Then it's about impact uncertainty. Which will truly move the needle? What looks promising may not scale. And then there is resource constraints, right? Budget, required skills, technology that your organization doesn't have. And then there is dynamic environment, which we are all familiar with. Market conditions, customer expectation, the technology evolving quickly. Everybody's feeling that today. So making yesterday's best use case is less relevant today. Oops. So how do you determine which use case best fits your needs and meets your strategic goals and business priorities? Microsoft has made that easy. You can actually go to Microsoft's portal, explore real-world stories of how organizations are leveraging Microsoft solutions. You can see different customer stories. You can search across examples with different industries and different scenarios, from cloud migration to AI innovation. This is a great resource to identify the strategies that align with your goals. So what is the strategic rationale behind the cost-effective use case evaluations, right? we should be asking 3 basic questions. Which use case aligns best with your business priority? Which use case really deliver quick win? And which use case offers the greatest potential on ROI? These 3 questions will help you narrow down and focus on those initiatives that are both immediate and long-term value. So when we start with this, you have to look for use cases that reduce overhead, streamline resource allocation, improve scalability, drive productivity gains, enhance customer satisfaction, and support revenue growth. A use case that doesn't align with your core priority will never have a meaningful impact. So ask yourself, does this initiative really support my top business goals? Right? Alignment really ensures that every single dollar and every single hour from your resource moves closer to your top key objectives, like growth, like efficiency, customer satisfaction. What are the factors you can consider here? So one is reducing overhead. Can this use case eliminate unnecessary cost? Does it streamline allocations? So people, time, process. Does it improve scalability without adding any more complexity? Does it improve the knowledge worker productivity gain on a day-to-day basis? Does it improve the customer experience? And does it really support the bottom line, which is revenue growth? So the use case is just not, we need to make sure that the use case is just not innovative, it's strategically relevant and outcome-driven. Now, what are the use cases that deliver the quick wins? Quick wins are important because they build momentum, they build confidence, and they gather support right away. Right? That is the next lens after the business priority that you should be looking at. It matters. Quick wins matters because it demonstrates early success, justify further investments, and create positive visibility, encouraging adoption. The key factor with quick wins that you need to consider is it low implementation complexity? Is it simple enough to be implemented right away? Does it have a short time to value? Can we get to the value right away? Then you have internal champions available. Because when you have an internal support, you know that you can deploy the use case right away and it has the right support you need. Quick wins, they're not trivial. They're about delivering immediate impact fast with minimum complexity and strong internal support. Now, let's talk about forecasting return on investment. To accurately quantify the value of investments, it's important that you realize the ROI that can be measured across multiple dimensions. While ROI is usually focused on dollars and usually are quantifiable, you have to understand the different dimensions of ROI. Various initiatives often deliver strategic and intangible values such as improved customer experience, faster decision-making, and stronger competitive advantage. Understanding these different layers of values enable organizations to make informed, data-driven, and prioritize initiatives that deliver meaningful long-term impact for cost efficiency. Now, let's walk through an example. We just talked about all the key questions that you should be asking. Let's talk about an example for an ROI, estimating an ROI for a modernization initiative. So first, we'll talk about the benefits, and then we'll talk about the cost for a typical modernization initiative. So let's talk about first infrastructure cost takeout, right? You have to estimate for a modernization of applications and workloads. You have to estimate CapEx spend, OpEx spend, data center, power, infra, software, all the costs that you're going to incur to host it. And then eliminate all those costs post-modernization. Then you talk about reducing the administrative cost. So the number of IT admins, full-time IT admins, right, that are supporting the IT infrastructure today, according to study and research, you can gain 90% productivity in that. Then you talk about the improvement in development efficiency. So the resources that code, you can get up to 40% productivity in post-modernization. Improving the application uptime, almost 90% reduction that used to be caused because of the downtime goes away post-modernization. And then faster application and feature development. You actually gain 43% increase in time to market post-modernization. And that's according to a IDC study. Now let's talk about costs. It falls into 3 different buckets. First is the incremental cloud run cost. Forecasting the cloud run cost leveraging Azure, forecast the cost leveraging the Azure pricing calculator, or talk to your Azure seller. It's important to keep in mind that beyond the select PaaS products, there will be likely some typical cloud costs, such as storage and Azure services like Data Factory, DevOps, SQL Database, Visual Code Studio, GitHub. Applications that are complex and experience high demand will require more compute instances and simple and shared applications that are used only occasionally. Then you have the one-time modernization cost, right? High-level estimate is worth $5K to $25K for per application for replatforming. You have $65K cost for per application for refactoring, and then $200K for rebuilding the cost. Then you have the one-time training cost that you also need to include, but that's only one-time training. Now here's a real-world example. Out of the 300 applications hosted on the premises, 60 will be modernized to Azure PaaS. That is about 20%. Then we assume 30% of those applications are simple shared, 65% are standard, and 5% are complex and high demand. For modernization strategy, we assume 5% are replatformed, 85% are replatformed, 13% are refactored or re-architected, and about 3% are rebuilt. It's important to define these assumptions upfront to ensure that your business case is realistic and actionable. And here's just a quick snapshot of what the modernization business case looked like. With that said, I'm going to hand off to my colleague Rob, who will take you through the scalable and efficient architectures and take you through some really cool demos. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrunal. So first off, I'm 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗶cie 𝗜𝗍𝗳. For those that don't know me, I am in our global customer success organization, and I lead our technical success team for both Azure Platform and our modernization part of the business. And the things I'm going to take you through today are actually going to touch on both sides of that. So you're going to see a little bit about modernizing and how we look at costs for that. And you're also going to see some of the things we do in the platform side to keep you really well aligned with the costs. So let me jump into it first with one of the big solutions and biggest area that my platform side of the team spends in today is around building the Azure Landing Zone. All right, so for those that aren't aware, Azure Landing Zone, you can look at it like this. If you look at how we have a house, we have a stadium, we have a bridge, they all have one thing in common, right? It's around building that foundation. None of these things could be successful, especially long term, if they don't have a solid foundation. When we look at Azure Landing Zone and how we built Azure Landing Zone is to build you that foundation for long-term scalable success with Azure. All right, so when we come with Azure Landing Zone, it's to drive efficiency and scalability so that you can work, your development team can work at the pace that they want to work on. Your platform engineering team could also have the guardrails in place. And of course, one of the biggest guardrails, while we're all here today, is to talk about how we can have guardrails around cost, right, and being cost efficient. Landing Zone helps you set these things up so you can develop, like I said, at the speed you want to, but yet have those controls in place so everybody feels very comfortable. All right, so when you look at Azure Landing Zone, it has 8 areas of design. And we kind of have them carved off. One side is like, these are the environment things, like the actual Azure resources and things like that that will actually deploy to put your landing zones in place. And then you have like a compliance side that you think about too, where you see like security and governance, management, platform automation. Now, On the environment side, it's incredibly important to get that side right, or else the governance and the management becomes very difficult. And what do I mean by that? And I'll actually show you this in my demo in just a little while. But the one to point out is around resource organization. Azure Landing Zone helps you to organize your resources, as well as making sure that you've got like the right tagging strategies, okay? You have maybe the right naming conventions. You have the right hierarchy so that you're inheriting policies as you work through Azure. Why are these important? Of course, because on the governance side, you are going to want to put controls in so that you can make sure that maybe your test development team is using the right series of VMs and they're not overspending, right? Because they can make their stuff run a lot faster if they use very expensive SKUs, but maybe you kind of want to put some controls in place there, right? So we help bring that all together under this umbrella of what we call landing zone. So when we go into governance, this is actually an example. So if you were to look at the hierarchy or the architecture of Azure Landing Zone, there is a part that is the landing zone itself, where we have it carved out into corp. And you could think of corp as probably the things that you are connected to from your enterprise. And then online management group is the online management group, maybe like your public facing, maybe you have an e-commerce website or something like that. So something that would be public facing. All right, now what's really nice here is you could put policy all the way up at the top on landing zone to control some of your costs. So maybe you have certain SKUs that you want to restrict, or you have certain services that you don't want people to deploy for one reason or another, maybe because they're not approved, or maybe because they're just something that you don't want to spend the money on right now. You could put something like that at the very top, right? And that would inherit all the way down to the subscriptions. But you may also find that you want to do things differently internal in corp than what you would do on a public-facing site as well. So you have that flexibility as well. And again, policies that you put whether online or in corp will also flow down to the actual production environments and the subscriptions below them. These guardrails are essential for you being, I would say, efficient with costs. Putting these things in place will absolutely save you from having a harsh conversation later down the road about why is this on my bill, who did this, and I didn't even know we were allowing that, And those are really interesting, and I'll tell you, as someone that's been in the cost space for, I've owned cost in the CSU for going on 6 years. We don't in any way have to, go to the customers and push cost optimization or FinOps and things like that. Like a lot of times, they're very well customer initiated because they get these bills and they're like, well, wow, what happened? Like, why is it so high, right? And a lot of it comes down to just proper governance. Landing Zone helps you, of course, do that. So when we talk about cost billing, it comes down to a lot of different tools that we have in place. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got tagging that I want to see that you make sure. We have different Azure pricing, plans that you can do, like Azure Hybrid Benefit, Azure Reservations, cost savings. These are different plans that you can put in place, or savings strategies that you can use. There's actual strategy even in storage, like you could tier your storage, right? So like you can have storage that is hot, warm, or cold, right? And depending on that, it could cost, you can save money there as well. So there's a lot of different things you can pull on to do savings around cost. And of course, we put a lot of these best practices in Landing Zone. We put policies in place. We try to steer you towards these so that you have a really successful time with Azure. You have a good experience with Azure. Now, first thing, of course, I want to show you is I'm going to jump over to our demo here. And what I want to show you here is actually something that's new, and that for Ignite this year is actually agent-enabled platform landing zone with Azure Migrate. So I want to go ahead and show you this demo here. So let me just flip over. And get this started.
And simplified deployment steps. Unlock agility and governance from day one and transform your infrastructure into a future-ready Azure environment. The migration agent is built to accelerate the planning and deployment of platform landing zones for customers on their journey to Azure. If you're a solution architect, cloud engineer, or DevOps tasked with setting up a platform landing zone as per the Azure landing zone architecture and guidance for your organization, the new migration agent is built for you. The agent streamlines every stage, from assisted design document creation to automated infrastructure as code generation and audit, all the way to assisted CI/CD deployments. Planning a platform landing zone becomes an interactive guided experience, bringing together automated recommendations, contextual guidance, faster feedback loops, and instant design-to-code generation. Start quickly with a simple prompt. I want to create a platform landing zone. The migration agent automatically creates a platform landing zone setup tailored to your Migrate project history and Cloud Adoption Framework guidelines, and explains every recommendation with clear, data-backed reasoning. All stakeholders involved in the platform landing zone can use the agent to get answers about any component, accelerate decision-making, clarify doubts, and access verified information with direct links to official Azure and Cloud Adoption Framework documentation. Within minutes, you can download the platform landing zone, consisting of the design doc and the infrastructure as code files combined in a single zip file. You now need to open the generated landing zone in VS Code. Once the platform landing zone is unpacked and open Visual Studio Code, you can continue working on it by asking GitHub Copilot, what can I do next? With the help of Azure Migrate MCP Server and GitHub Copilot in agent mode, you can further customize, audit, and deploy the platform landing zone to Azure. First, it is asking if you'd like to set up the Azure Migrate MCP Server. In this case, it is already running, so you can simply type proceed. Next, it will confirm that you'd like to connect to the Azure Migrate project, which ensures that the context is shared between the two agents. Within the MCP server, there are several tools available which can help you manage policies, review, and deploy the landing zone. You can use the tools directly or ask questions in plain text, such as this one. Help me customize this for a dev test environment. The GitHub Copilot agent asks for confirmation before fetching additional context from the migration agent. You are now witnessing the capability of proactive recommendations. Things like reducing cost by turning off features like DDoS protection and updating naming conventions are performed automatically. In addition, platform landing zones can take advantage of the thousands of Azure policies available, which are curated for your use case in real time. As you can see, some of them can be relaxed for a dev test environment, and you can exclude them with a click of a button. In the end, the agent is creating a summary document to highlight all the changes made, which can be submitted for approval or further customization. Thank you.
All right, so I first wanted to show you a little bit of what's new and our agentic experience for deploying landing zones. Although, if you are looking to get started as well, we still also continue to maintain a portal-based installation of it, as well as we have Bicep and Terraform accelerators. So all of that is available for you to get started with landing zone, and of course the new agentic experience that I just shared with you there. Okay, but what I want to talk to you next about, or show you next about, is all right. So now we've got our landing zone, and we want to think about like, well, how can we actually like leverage this, right? Especially to be more cost efficient. So take for example. All right, and I actually took this, this is an old demo app that I rehydrated, and I think the last time I used it was like 2018. And it was like IIS server, you know, some middle application, you know, .NET service, and then a couple SQL databases on the back end, okay? Very traditional, like something you would find, you know, is a 3-tier, you know, style application. And I said, all right, let's modernize this, but I want to modernize it and be cost efficient at the same time, all right? And I want to use Copilot, GitHub Copilot, to help me figure out, like, look at my options and figure out what's the best way to go about doing this. And so to summarize just quickly, and I'll actually walk you through it, but we basically did two things when we looked at modernization for this to be cost efficient. One, we use an existing AKS cluster. We want to just get more density in the cluster, right? Why spend money on something else if I'm already paying for that cluster? And then, of course, having these SQL databases, maybe I can move it into something like Postgres, you know, and maybe save a little bit of money on licensing there as well. So let me show you actually a little bit of what this looks like. So let me just. click over to here. And I tried to make the font large enough for everybody so you can see this. But all right, so first off, this is actually my eShop on web. And this is my legacy, like my old .NET. I think it's .NET 2.2, if I remember correctly. And I actually built a couple prompts for it. And I said, hey, I would like to modernize the eShop on web legacy application, and I want to maximize the use of an existing production-grade AKS cluster. I'm concerned about my costs, and I want to know what my options are. All right, so those are the prompt files that I gave it, and of course I can go ahead and I can go up in here and I can run it. And it'll basically analyze my code. It'll take a look at what we've got going on. And it is actually going to say, hey, let's see what your options are, okay? And it will actually not only give me some options, but it is going to give me some, and this will be based on like, the retail cost, but it's going to basically say, hey, you could containerize this to AKS, which is something that may be recommending how many hours, and it's going to give me a kind of an idea of the costs and cost breakdowns. It's going to be another option. I could go to app services. Actually, the first time I built this demo, that's what I did. I actually went to app services, but then I was like, man, if I add a little bit of context here that I've got this AKS cluster, maybe that would actually change the options about what's recommended, right? Or I can go like fully cloud native. So those are the three options it comes down to, and kind of gives me an idea of what the savings are. But what it also do is start to give me an implementation plan for going about and actually making the changes and deploying this. So I'm going to flip over to my other VS Code. And so I've actually gone ahead now and gone through the implementation plan using GitHub Copilot and moved everything over. It's all running right now in my AKS cluster right now. And I said, all right, so now that I've got this up and running, I want to make sure I have some controls. So what are some of the controls? Like I talked to you in the beginning with landing zone, right? What are the tags that I have in place here? What are the cost-related policies that I have in place here? And actually, like, can I actually test this to make sure that it's actually working as I'm intended this to work, so someone cannot spin up a VM that I have not approved for that? So I actually have built a couple additional prompts here. So if I go through and run those in the current chat, it's going to actually come up with, it's going to look at all three. It's going to come up with basically a full plan to try out all of these prompts and test them all the way through. And so, and by the way, I would highly encourage for all of you that go through this to, when you do use the policies, you put things in place, do things like this, test your policies, test things, make sure you're getting the responses and it's working the way that you want. So in a second here, what you're going to see is it's actually going to give us a nice little output of where it's going to show us what the tags are, right? What policies we have in place, and it's actually going to try to. I have not approved E-series VMs, by the way, in my landing zone, and because I did not maybe purchase reservations for them, for example. So I don't want people using those. I want people to use the resources where I've purchased reservations, just for like an example. So let's give it another second here, and we'll scroll down. It's almost there, I promise you. There we go. So here we go. So you can see I've got 7 tags deployed, okay? Environment, project, cost center, owner, application, deployment method, right? I've got cost policies in place, blocking, VM SKUs, especially in my AKS node pool, all right? And deploying outside of a region, right? Because I maybe purchased reservations, and again, in that region, so I don't want folks to deploy something in maybe a different region. So you can see that the cost governance framework, it says it's fully operational, and it is definitely going to save and protect us. So again, we can develop, but yet I don't have to have folks saying, oh my gosh, like how did that get deployed over there in that environment? So, all right. Let me go back to our. So what I want to show you next is, so real quick, that's the application I have running. I know it's like I told you, it's a really old .NET workload. And the other thing to show you is I also added cube cost in my AKS cluster. And if I go here into savings, it'll actually give me additional like savings just to make sure, suggestions like, hey, you should purchase reservations, or there's some right sizing of my containers and things to do as well. I've loaded all those things off. I'm trying to be as cost efficient as possible. All right, so let's go back over to our slides. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about our pricing offers. Okay, so for example, like say we have a manufacturing company, right? And they're going to modernize like an ERP platform, okay? And they again, I want to be as cost efficient as possible, and they want to know what their options are going to be. So first off, just to baseline everybody in the room, we've got Azure reservations, right? You can purchase reservations at 1 or 3 year, and they're tied to specific resources, right? So, VMs, databases, app service environments, okay? And they're usually tied to the region in which you purchased it in, okay? Then we have something a little bit more flexible and dynamic, okay? And that's our Azure Savings Plan, right? And this is different. It's not tied to individual resources, but it's more about discounts for committing to a consistent spend over time, okay? And it's a little bit more flexible. So you could, of course, buy a savings plan, and you could use it across regions, all right? And then we also have the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So if you have software assurance, you can allocate some savings on, say, like a Windows Server or a SQL Server, things like that, right, to see additional savings there when you allocate that. All right, so those are kind of the 3 things. And by the way, none of those cost any outages whatsoever. So take, for example, and I'm going to just kind of keep with what I was working with you. We have an AKS cluster, right? It's in multiple regions, right? We have VMs that are in multiple regions. We've got, Postgres database deployed, and then we have some VMs deployed, all right? So that's kind of what it looks like in our environment, okay? Now, the stuff at the very top, it's very unpredictable. Like, so maybe we're going to spin up and scale out on in our cluster, maybe we won't, right? Things come and go, depends, maybe it's seasonal for why those things happen, all right? But then we also have some dynamic workload costs. These are more predictable, but they're across multiple regions, okay? And then we have, of course, our Postgres database that's very stable. It runs all the time. It stays in the same region. We don't move that around, all right? And then we have also some underlying support VMs as well, also very stable. So when we look at like how are we going to apply those different kind of like savings, offers, we look at it like this. All right, so at the very top for those AKS guys up at the very top, there's nothing that we're going to apply there. But as you can see, for the dynamic workloads, we're going to look at using a savings plan there. That's going to give us some good cost savings there and definitely make us more efficient, okay? And then for the stable workloads, we're going to look at reservations. Reservations there will definitely give us the most savings, and that will absolutely maximize it right there. Now, we can also look at it and layer on top of it, there's a possibility that we could use the Azure Hybrid Benefit as well, and we could allocate those to the VMs where it makes sense. And that will give us some additional cost savings even on top of the savings plans or the reservations, all right? So that kind of a strategy that has been very effective for our customers, and we've seen this when we do cost optimization engagements, for example. This is what we apply when we look at their workloads. Now, we also have the Azure Pricing Calculator, and there's something really cool here I want to show you on the Pricing Calculator that's new that we just released for Ignite. So let me go over to here for you and show you the pricing calculator. Because a lot of times, you saw that we use Copilot and how it can help us kind of get us an idea of the costs. And I just walked you through kind of like a very, very typical customer scenario, right, with using the different offerings. But sometimes, at some point, you're going to want to go in the pricing calculator and kind of work out what the costs are going to be for you. So say that we had the example I just showed you where we had those different services running with Postgres and we had an AKS cluster, things like that. And you're like, okay, so you would normally, or in the past, would have to go through and start adding all these things into the calculator. But I want to show you estimate templates. This is new. shut this out. And we have scenarios here that you can go ahead and you can look at the different scenarios. And basically what we've done is we've taken architectural patterns that are proven with customers. We loaded them up in these templates here and made them available for you. So if, for example, if I pick this one here, let's just take a look at the architecture. This is a very common architectural pattern for this scenario of cloud-native apps on Kubernetes, okay? And I would say, all right, I'm pretty happy with the basic architecture. This reference architecture looks correct. Let's start the estimate. When I click that, what it's going to do is it's going to take all the resources that makes up that reference architecture, and it's going to actually add it in for me automatically. So I don't have to go and hunt and pick all the services out myself. And then I'm actually free from here. I can go through and say, all right, if I want to make any changes to them, I can absolutely just open it up and say, all right, well, you know, I want to change maybe the instance, maybe because, you know, I know I'm going to buy a savings plan for these, so I'm going to check that off. You know, I would actually kind of work my way through it to kind of customize it how I need fit. Now, you're going to say, well, my workload is, you know, when I look at this diagram here, I'm missing maybe the Postgres server, for example. I can go to products over here. I can go to databases, and we'll go to Postgres. We're going to add it to our estimate, and then we can go back here and hit view. And so there's Postgres. It's right there. Now I've added it. But of course, my Postgres database, I want to make sure that it is going to be, you know, resilient. So I'm going to make sure let's make sure we include high availability maybe in the cost of it. And so we'll add that to the calculator as well. So you can, again, keep going back, and you can save these, of course, and you can go back and update them as you need, and you know, can kind of work through the products and bring them into there. So that's new for a night. I encourage you all to play around with it. I think you'll find that to be useful as you kind of work to figure out what the action, you know, kind of what your costs are going to look like. All right. So the other thing to share with you is a little bit about optimizing your Azure spend with the insights from we have an optimization agent, okay? And I would like to show you that demo as well, because I think what you'll find there is that will be another way to use the Azure portal to understand what your costs are going to look like. So give me a second to...
On Azure's Operations Center and Azure Copilot to monitor, manage, and optimize their environment, including uncovering and executing on cost and carbon savings. In this scenario, the user is working in Operations Center with their subscriptions selected, quickly seeing subscription spend, carbon impact, and optimization opportunities at a glance. To begin, the user asks Copilot to surface the top cost-saving opportunities. After switching into agent mode, they use Copilot's Context IQ to locate and select the specific subscription they want to analyze, ensuring the assistant has the right scope. They enter their query and search for the desired subscription, allowing Copilot to identify and target the exact subscription they are interested in and generate the most relevant optimization recommendations. The experience can be expanded to full screen for easier review. The optimization agent interprets the user's request, evaluates resource signals, and prioritizes recommended actions, surfacing the top 5 opportunities. Each recommendation clearly outlines potential savings, the suggested action to take, and a link to dive deeper into the details. Curious about a specific suggestion, the user asks Copilot to explain it. The agent highlights that it was triggered by underutilization, quantifies cost and carbon savings, compares the current SKU with the recommended option, and shows charts of current versus projected utilization, demonstrating increased efficiency without impacting performance. If the user can't take the recommended action, they can ask the agent for alternatives. Copilot then proposes other options that meet performance needs, clearly outlining each path and the associated savings. When they're ready to execute, the user asks Copilot to generate an Azure CLI script. Copilot instantly creates a ready-to-run command with both the current and suggested options, enabling fast review, copy, and execution. This agent-driven workflow makes optimization faster, more intuitive, and increasingly automated. This enables teams to validate insights and maximize value with Azure.
All right. So why I wanted to show you that is this is in public preview, and in fact, you have to turn it on at the tenant level for those that want to try it out. But once you have this turned on, I encourage you to try it out. Right now, of course, like when you run cost optimization, you either have to look through workbooks, you have to go through maybe advisor recommendations, things like this. We're looking to use this to bring a lot more of the insights and efficiencies to you, so you just have them at your fingertips and also have the ability to implement the changes, right? And so you actually have like the tools, the automation, the scripts to actually go ahead and take action on the recommendations that we have there around cost. All right, so.
Cloud operation.
So next step. So I wanted to save a few minutes at the end here just to say, all right, well, you know what, so what are my next steps? So there's a few different things. First off, of course, is there's an AI agent learning path. There's the cost efficiency blog. Check that out. Everything I showed you is on there. And of course, there is FinOps on Azure as well. So these are things to actually go ahead, take a look at, and they will help you lead that. And of course, if the landing zone is, for anyone, you can go to like, you can of course go to our cloud adoption framework. Azure Landing Zone is right there under CAF Ready. You can learn all about that and the different policies and the guardrails that I talked about earlier. The other thing to point out is we have Azure Accelerate. So if you would like some help, like you would say, hey, I would love to have Microsoft to come and help me. Like I liked what Rob showed me today, and I thought this was going to be really useful, and we can do a lot here. So if you want some of our experts to come in and work with you, if you want a partner to come and work with you and unlock some partner funding there. And of course, the last thing to share with you is we actually have something we call the Cloud Accelerate Factory that will actually come and work with you as well to help you actually maybe modernize one of your workloads, right? And of course, with modernizing, making sure that it stays cost effective and stays within, your expectations. All right, so with that said, I want to just say thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes. I'd like to leave I left about 3 minutes to take some questions over here at the end. So just come find me. If you have any questions, have anything, and I'll answer and do the best I can. And Mrunal will be here with me. So he'll come out here as well. So, okay? All right. Well, thank you, everybody.